In the age of hyper-reality, the mind is no longer merely a receiver of external stimuli. It is now actively shaped, mirrored, and transformed by simulations of stimuli. What we call virality is not a simple metric of popularity or reach. It is the psychic propagation of symbols, images, and gestures that trigger replication. These replications act as memetic code, digital psychic DNA, that binds together groups, movements, and identities in new accelerated forms. And nowhere is this more visible than in the transformation of sexual and gender roles under the weight of hyper-mirroring. To begin, we must define virality beyond the digital sense. It is a mode of transmission, a force of replication, a psychic infection that spreads without central command. Virality succeeds not only because of exposure, but because the symbol or image has tapped into a latent vulnerability or desire in the collective psyche. This is where gender and sexuality become particularly susceptible. They are among the most fundamental and deeply rooted aspects of identity, yet also among the most fluid under social pressure. The traditional gender binary, male and female, functioned historically as a mythic order rooted in biological distinctions and archetypal roles. These binaries were reinforced through rites of passage, religious narrative, and community expectation. But in the hyper-mirror age, where oneself is not only reflected back, but algorithmically sorted, manipulated, and recombined, identity itself becomes plastic. The hyper-mirror rewards newness, visibility, and alignment with certain narrative arcs. This has led to a rise in gender performances that are both authentic expressions and reflections of viral templates. One must not dismiss these identities as inauthentic. On the contrary, they are deeply felt. But they are shaped to a significant degree by the environment of feedback loops, likes, shares, representations, and validation. A trans identity, for instance, may emerge as a sincere self-understanding. But the language, imagery, and rituals available for expressing that self are largely mimetic and structured by the archive of previous digital performances. This creates a recursive identity formation, where people become who they are through the reflection of others' becoming. The shift from being to becoming is central here. Under the hyper-mirror, you do not merely discover who you are. You co-create that identity in tandem with others doing the same. This leads to new tribes, movements, and groupings based not on traditional culture, geography, or shared experience, but on symbolic alignment, psychic resonances mediated by image. Institutional incentives amplify these signals. Media companies, educational institutions, and governments now often financially, socially, or legally support certain identity expressions. This is not always nefarious. It can emerge from a desire to be inclusive. But it also reveals a structural fact. Systems of power now act upon the mirror, not the object. Influence is measured in optics, not essence. The implications for the psyche are profound. For many, identity becomes performative survival. To be visible is to exist. To not be mirrored is to disappear. Thus, gender transitions, cosmetic modifications, and lifestyle signaling become strategies of legibility. The psyche conforms to what is visible and legible rather than what is enduring or self-coherent. Yet beneath these shifts lies the deeper philosophical insight. Humans have always been mimetic creatures. What is new is the scale, speed, and saturation of the mirroring process. Where once a child mirrored the family, now they mirror the global spectacle. So, what is to be done? One must not reject identity, nor denigrate those undergoing real psychic struggles. Rather, the goal is to introduce meta-awareness, a capacity to see the mirror while standing in front of it. This awareness allows for choice, for agency, for discernment amid the flood of simulacra. Virality is not necessarily truth. What spreads fastest is not always what is deepest. The philosopher in the hyper-reality must become a mirrorsmith, one who learns to polish, distort, and occasionally break the mirror in service of what is real beneath the reflections.